Well, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Empowered Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have a really special guest who has a very unique perspective on grief, and I'm really excited for her to be on the show today. Her name is Krista Kowalczyk. How do you say your last name?
Kowalczyk, very Polish.
Kowalczyk.
Kowalczyk.
Okay.
Yes.
It's very important for me to get names right because I have a people have a hard time saying my last name, so I try to make sure I get it right.
Okay.
Um, so I have Krista on the podcast today. For over 25 years, she has captured life's most cherished moments as the owner of Impressions Photography. After Hurricane Ian, she used her photography skills and volunteered to salvage thousands of flooded, damaged photos from people that lost photos in that situation. That experience led her on a mission to proactively help people secure their photos. Her upcoming book, Beyond the Storm, and her easy to follow photo digitizing courses ensure that everyone has the skills needed to keep up with their own personal photography safe. So, Krista, I want to welcome you onto my podcast. Thanks for being a guest today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you on the podcast today for this specific reason. I'm stumbling with my words today. I'm gonna edit that out. Um, Grief is a very non-linear process that I've tried to share with people on the show. And I think what's really cool about your story is that you have a very different perspective on grief because as I read into your intro and as we got to talk on our first meeting, is that you were down there helping people, hurricane victims, trying to regather photos and memories that they had that, and I'm sure some people had those things lost due to the storm, but other people, you were helping restore those memories of things. Tell us a little bit about your journey in photography and in that particular moment of helping hurricane victims with their photographs as they were going through that grief process.
Yeah, for sure. So I am a lifelong photographer and photo lover. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I absolutely love photography. So got my bachelor's degree in photography right out of college, started my own business, and I have been photographing weddings and families here in Southwest Florida where I live for over 25 years, and absolutely, absolutely love that. I love everything about pictures. Even my own phone is just filled to the max with pictures. But when Hurricane Ian came through, it just devastated my area here in Southwest Florida. Some homes had as much as 15 feet of flood water come through them. So, and it wasn't just well, I didn't understand this before the hurricane and before this happened in my area. It's not just a stream of clean water. It's mud and sewage filled water that comes in and destroys everything in its wake. So after the hurricane, I had a friend of mine, her father's home, he's 89 at the time. Her father's home was destroyed, 15 feet of water. So we just volunteered to help her with her. Everything had to be taken out. Every item they owned had to be taken out to the trash and sat at the curb. Like everything from the toaster to the couch, it was all completely destroyed. So while my husband and I went there and we were helping her and her father to clear out the home, she was taking photographs that she had found in the house, a box here, some pictures on the wall, and she was just spreading them out in the yard. And she asked me if there's any way I could help her to digitize them or salvage them or anything that could be done. It was her parents' only copies of her parents' wedding pictures, like very, very special photos. So I immediately just kind of took the information I knew from everything from photography school to my years of handling photos and I started cleaning up the pictures for her, washing them, literally washing pictures one at a time and getting digital copies of them. And I realized just from talking to her that a lot of people didn't probably have these tools or didn't realize that their photos could be saved, even though they might be covered in mud. There's possibility that a lot of them still could be salvaged. So I went from there to just going door to door through neighborhoods that were completely devastated and just knocking on doors or catching people in their yard and saying, do you have any photographs? I can help you. I can take some of them for you. I can give you a couple tips on how you can save them. And ended up just filling my SUV with disgusting smelly photos for several trips to bring them back to my house and start cleaning them up and washing them. And I kind of thought as I was doing this, I just wanted to, do just a good deed, do something nice to help some people that had had a really hard time. But what I didn't realize going into this, that I was going to find myself standing in the middle of a home of people that had been traumatized, and they were going through it was the grief of all sorts of things, of their lives being turned upside down, and these photographs that were so special to them. They were grieving all of these losses at the same time. So I found myself in this position where not only was I helping people to salvage photos, but I was just listening and hugging and trying to console people who had been through such a traumatic experience. So that's kind of how I got to here. And I took what I learned from that experience and realized that I just need to get the word out to as many people as possible before disaster strikes, before anything happens. There's ways to secure your pictures and to make sure they're safe, so you don't have to go through that same that one extra piece on top of everything else after a natural disaster. Losing your photos too is just, it's just too much, and there are ways to be proactive about it. So now I just share tips every day on my social media channels. I have a book coming out. I get the information out every way, kind of just try to help people to make sure that they are proactively securing pictures.
I really love that. And that's, what you just said today is so important from this aspect of grief, because I usually have guests on my show that share personal trauma they went through, or personal loss they went through. And you have this third party kind of observer view of watching people go through grief and go through trauma. And especially in a hurricane kind of environment, I've talked to people that have experienced them. I personally haven't, but it's like you've lost everything. I mean, you've lost your house, your clothes, your furniture, your car.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost,
Your job, like people lost their
yeah.
businesses, their jobs, their income, their pets. It's a lot. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, you're watching all these people going through some very heavy loss, and it's almost, I've heard it being described as seeing people just literally going, I don't even know where to begin. I just everything's gone, it's done, and just trying to figure out what those next steps are in the process, or let alone trying to figure that out. Where am I going to live? How am I going to get money? How am I going to
Hmm.
recover what I can? Or if I lost everything, how am I going to go find new clothes or a new car or job? And you're dealing with so many things hitting you at once, and that's got
Yeah.
to be such an interesting perspective to be the person that you were in that moment for these people, just as an observer watching them go through that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I look at disasters completely different now, especially when it's a disaster that affects an entire community, like a fire or a hurricane. I absolutely have a different perspective. I had one woman was just sobbed. She brought her photos to me, and she just stood in my kitchen, and she was just sobbing. But one thing that stuck with me, she was crying, and she finally collected her words, and she said, "I don't even know where my mail is going." And I thought, something so small, where is your mail
Wow.
going? Like that's it's you think about the big picture of it, but you don't think everything you do in the day, all those little things like that, all is disrupted too. So yeah, it definitely has given me a completely different perspective on whether it was the fires that happened in Maui or in California, or Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. I see these different storms or disasters now, tornadoes in Nebraska. I've talked to different people who've been through this, and I have a very different perspective on even how to be a person to help console that person. I did learn after Hurricane Ian, a lot of people were reaching out to me. I remember just 2 or 3 weeks later, people would reach out to me and say, "So are things starting to get back to normal?" And we're literally at the point that's about 2.5 years after Hurricane Ian, and there are still things that are, I mean, I would say half of our hotels and resorts haven't reopened. I mean, there's still homes that are just completely destroyed. There are still people living in temporary housing. So it's a very long process, and I don't know if people realize that aspect of it, that when a community is destroyed, it's not a matter of a couple of weeks or even 6 months to have things back to normal.
Yeah, I was watching a Grant Cardone clip on Instagram, because I don't even know how his house in California was the last one standing on the beach. And the crazy part was too is that his house wasn't untouched. I mean, there was smoke damage, fire damage across one of the sides of it, but he went back there last week and he said nothing's been done. I mean, there's all the houses, all the destruction, the charred up 2x4s and everything. It's all laying across the beach. There's still debris on the roadway. I mean, they haven't cleaned up anything. And,
Yeah.
I can't imagine, and I don't really care if you own a multi-million dollar house or a $200,000 house. I don't care. Like, you still lost something big of your life, in these fires. And I like that you shared that perspective that some people say, oh, like, is it better 3 weeks later? No, it's not better. I mean, we're not even at that place of, we even have a foundation of how we're going to fix this. Uh,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. That was the one, and that is something I look very differently. I actually had one of my college sorority sisters lost her home in the fires in California, and I've been thinking about her a lot more recently because it's been a little time now. I think that initially after these disasters, it's you're in shock. I think most people are literally in shock, and I feel like maybe at the 6 month mark or a little bit later, seeing what she's going to need. Is there a way I can help you now, or trying to reach out to her? But I thought, at this point, she's still in shock at this early stage.
yeah, that's the whole thing a lot of people don't know about grief and trauma is that I was talking to a guest yesterday that got held captive by her boyfriend in her apartment for 6 hours. It was a really tragic story. Thankfully, she escaped that thing and she's doing much better today. But
Wow.
she talked a lot about how when we're in these moments of high trauma like this, even in a disaster, she said there's so much adrenaline pumping through your body that you are literally in survival mode and you're just trying to get through the day or get through the hour or get through the week. You're just trying to get there. You're not even able to think, 6 months down the road, where am I going to be? You can't even process that. And something I thought was powerful about her story, she said didn't hit me until 2 weeks later when things quieted down and stopped that I went, oh my God, what did I just go through? Like, what the hell just happened? And I can't imagine that for disaster
Yeah.
victims. I mean, like you said, 6 months later is probably when it hits and they say, oh my
Yeah.
God, like what did I just survive and how am I even here?
Yeah.
They ask themselves
Yeah.
those questions.
I think just the getting through the day to day, if you're living in a hotel room, you're waking up next to the makeshift situation. I mean, I think it's just a matter of survival at first until there's a moment to actually process what you need to get through the situation. I know for myself, one thing that I thought was, because I was the person from the outside. This wasn't my house that was destroyed. It wasn't my photos. In my mind, I thought, I felt so bad for everyone else. But even as a person looking in on this, I felt to a certain degree, I started to see that I was grieving. I was grieving their losses. I had to work through some anger, even that I was very angry about what had happened. So it is interesting what a traumatic situation will do, what it will do to you.
Yeah, and I think that's what's unique about your perspective because just like this gal I was interviewing yesterday, like I've heard these stories on Dateline, I've heard them on the news, and we see all the, flashing police lights and the helicopters and the armed police officers and stuff walking around these situations, or even, disaster related. We see the fire trucks, we see the police barriers, we see the yellow tape going everywhere. But what we don't see behind that is the actual people going through this and what are they experiencing? How are they doing, by the way? Nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered now that I'm in the grief space, what must that be like for you to not, I mean, people aren't even talking about you, they're talking about the overarching thing, and
Yeah.
showing all the civil service there to try to help fix it and, make it better. But in reality land, there, like you said, it's 2.5 years past Hurricane Ian, and we're still not even having communities restored to where they were prior to loss. And then also, yeah, how are these people navigating this? Have some people had to relocate to get a new job and start over in life? Are some people able to rebuild? And even if they did, life isn't the same as before it happened. And so are they, how long does it take these people to adjust after going through loss?
Yeah, no, for sure. I know a lot of people who just left. There was um acquaintances, friends of friends and stuff that are just gone. Like you would think in a normal circumstance there would have been a going away party for them, or we would have said goodbye, but there's a lot of people I probably just will never see again. They lost their homes, they lost their cars, they took off and went to a different part of the world. They're just gone. So a lot of people left. It was also really difficult to see here in Southwest Florida. We have a huge retirement. A lot of people retired, a lot of an older population. So for a lot of people, like my friend's father, who I initially started helping, he was 89 years old, still living independently in his own home, driving his minivan. He had a very comfortable life in the same community he'd been in for many years. And all of a sudden, his house is completely destroyed. His car is gone. Is he going to spend the next 2 years at 89 physically rebuilding his home? Is he going to go get another car? Like with him, I think he also lost his independence perhaps a little bit. So they, as a family, he moved in with his adult children for a little bit, but then moved into an an assisted living community. But it forced him into this. So I imagine I thought a lot about him and a lot of people that were in a similar situation where they were also grieving the loss of their independence to a certain extent. And what they were going through, what kind of trauma that is to not just lose your home of all these years and your things, but possibly, the way you thought you were going to be living out your next few years has now been taken from you too.
And I think that's a really tough part about grief and loss in a lot of ways is we're not just grieving what happened in the present moment, what got destroyed, but we're also saying, what's the future of life look like now? And I can't imagine this 89-year-old man who's probably on retirement or Social Security probably doesn't have a lot of those things that a younger person with more money has, for example, to just rebuild and start over. He may not have those things. And so that really becomes a major life shift for somebody at that point in life. And that can be very, very, very difficult on elderly people. I went through that with my grandfather when he had cancer. I learned the phrase sundowning, and it's where people that are elderly get very, very confused at the end of the day. And it's because if they're out of their environment they're used to that they've been living in for 20, 30, 40 years, and then you plop them in a brand new place, it can be very shocking to them and very, very hard for them to adjust or even accept that this is my new circumstance of life. And so that adds another layer to the loss that they're going through. So I can't imagine how hard that must have been for somebody like him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my heart really went out to him, especially. I just he was always such a happy, jovial man, and just it's like it kind of stole a little bit of his spirit, and that really just broke my heart seeing him and what he was going through for sure.
Well, I think it's really powerful, by the way, that you're helping people restore photos that were destroyed in disasters, because I do know that a lot of people I've talked to in grief and in loss, including myself, that photos are something that give us a connection still to that person that may or may not be in our life. It may be also a time in our life that we get to look back on and reflect on good times, bad times, whatever it may be. I find that such a powerful thing. What's been the experience when you restore these photos for people that really thought they lost them or thought they were gone, and you're able to come back and say you were able to revive some of these photos? What's that like when you get to meet people at that stage?
Oh my gosh, that's been the highlight for sure. Was absolutely like just I can't even express how happy people were. I was really nervous at first because a lot of pictures were just destroyed. People would give me, boxes of pictures, and a lot of them I could not save. So there was one woman in a family. They had lost a child when she was, I think, about 2 or maybe 3 years old, a little one. But this was 20 years ago, back before digital pictures. It was all print photos they had of her, and they'd made a memorial album. And it was this beautiful album full of photos, and it was a mess. They brought it to me. It was covered in mud. It was mostly destroyed. And so I took the album and said, I'll do the best I can to try to clean these photos and to save them. I'll get digital copies. I'll do all these things. Well, as I worked on, I realized probably 75% of it, the photos were just destroyed. The image was scratched off. There was nothing there. You couldn't even make out that what these were. They were just blank pieces of paper, some of them. I was able, about 25% of them, I was able to restore the photos. I cleaned them up. I digitized them. I did some Photoshop work to them, tried to recreate, put it back together. And I was able to save that 25%. I was so nervous about sitting down with this family to show them the pictures because I thought they're going to be devastated that most of their pictures are gone. And I'm going to have to be the bearer of the bad news on this. So I took the photos that I had, I reprinted nice new prints, I spread them out for them. They were beyond thrilled. They were in tears. They were so happy because they thought they were all gone. So the fact that we were able to save these few was so important to them. And that just, I mean, it was like a huge sigh of relief for me because I was so worried going into this. But then I found after that, that was the sentiment with every single person I met with. They were okay with the fact that some of them were gone because they thought they were all gone. So the fact that some were able to be saved was really, really special for people. So that was definitely a highlight in the entire experience for me, was being able to hand back those photos to people for sure.
I think that's really cool because I know what it's like to lose a photo for whatever reason and you find it years later and you're just like, oh my God, I thought I never had this. And now I do. It really creates this
Yeah.
real connection in you that it's almost like a relief in a sense. It's like I still have this. And I
Yeah.
think I was going to ask you too about, since you're more in the photography world than a lot of people are there a lot of people utilizing digital aspects of things? Because, for example, I have an iPhone and I actually had to upgrade my storage to 2 terabytes because I got 17,000 photos from 8 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are you helping educate people if there's resources like that out there that they can digitalize in that aspect? And that way, if something does happen, it's somewhere in the cloud is where I'll say that, and we can grab it out of there when we want it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I realized that as I was helping people through the hurricane, I realized a lot of people I was talking to didn't realize there was even steps they could have taken to proactively have digitized those old photos. So that kind of spawned what I was doing. That was the first thing I started just posting on social media, just sharing tips, trying to help people to understand that you don't have to be very tech savvy. You don't have to be like a computer guru to get a digital copy of those old photos. There's some super simple methods. There's apps on your phone you can use to get a digital copy of an old photo. Super easy scanners. You can get the job done fast. So now I share that information a lot, but that also led into how we are not handling, as a general rule, most people are not handling their digital photos as well as they should, meaning they're not backing them up. They're not making sure that they're safe. And I found through doing this work and now helping people, it is just as devastating to lose a year of photos from 2019 as it is as when I was helping people through Hurricane Ian with flood damaged photos. So if you have photos that aren't backed up, or you think they are and you lose the backup, or you accidentally erase photos, and I've talked to many people who are just as heartbroken about that. So I do like to share tips too on my social media on ways to back up your photos, easy places to make sure your photos are secure. I talk a lot about even Amazon Photos. It's free. If you have Amazon Prime, you can just download the app to your phone, set it up to automatically back up your photos, and it will every night it will take all of your photos and back them up. As long as you have Amazon Prime, it's totally free. So now something happens to your iCloud, if you're on iPhone, or you accidentally delete a bunch of stuff on your phone, whatever happens, they're also in Amazon Photos. So that's just like one easy step people can take to make sure that their digital photos are also safe. But there's tons of great cloud services, and you can get an external hard drive, you can all these different places, but you just need to make sure your digital photos, whether it's print photos that you digitized or the pictures you're taking today, just make sure they're saved in multiple locations so you can avoid that heartbreak.
That's what I've been really curious about because I've seen that there's a lot of options out there, and I'm glad you brought up Amazon, for example, because there's so many providers out there, but I've always wondered like how do we guarantee these things are safe? Because we're sending stuff from like our phone up into the atmosphere somewhere up in a cloud. And like I always hope that those servers are protected for whatever reason, because if they're not, then we're gonna lose something in the crossfire. One thing you brought up when we first met that you jogged my memory with what you were saying. You brought up a passion about reprinting photos. Like a lot of people keep photos on their phone now or keep them on their computer. And I wanted to ask you about that. Is there a revival of printing photos again?
Oh gosh, I'd hope so. I think they're fabulous. I think that there's a great connection, especially, with family and friends, to take just a group of the photos, these photos you've taken over the past year, and just print some of them, have tangible photos. So I started doing this. I do once a month. I print a handful of photos. I put them in a photo album. It takes no time. It's super easy. But everybody, my family, or we have adult children, they come home. They want to look through the pictures. They want to see, when they were here over the Christmas holiday, or when we took that trip over the summer. They love leafing back through the old photos. But I don't feel like that's not happening on your phone. Nobody wants to gather around your phone and look at your pictures together. Actually, I just last week had a friend of mine come back from a trip. It was a big European vacation. and scrolling through the pictures for 10 minutes. And I probably looked at, I don't know, 500 pictures with them. And I thought this would be so much better if you just had prints of them. They're much more enjoyable to hold tangible pictures again. So I personally hope there is a revival of printing pictures. I encourage everybody to do it. A lot of people in my community, I'm on Instagram, I talk about it a lot, and my Instagram community, they're all doing it too. So yeah, I'm definitely a big advocate for printing the photos on your phone again.
I love that because I do miss holding old photos.
Yeah.
I was laughing because I went to my grandparents about around Christmas time or so, and long story short, I had no idea my grandmother had all these photos, and they're from way back in the day, like 1930s, 1940s. And it was so interesting going through this photo book because some of the photos had faded, but I was shocked at how well the photo quality was back in the day. And as I was flipping through these photos, I started sitting there going, I have 17,000 photos on my phone. And then I was going, this would be like a library in the house. Like if I print out all the photos I have. Um, but yeah,
Well,
it was so cool to hold an old photo for once, because
yeah.
it's so different from what we're used to today.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's great. And I mean, I'm not suggesting you print all 17,000, but I bet you could print 200 of them and have a nice story of what's happened in there, or just a few hundred. You'd be surprised at how few. We're such overshooters now too. I'm sure that of those 17,000, many of them are similar photos of the same event, that I think you narrow it down to a couple that really tell the story really well. It's fun to look at them again.
Yeah, that's something that I got into photography a year ago, and I recently bought a zoom lens, which I'm still trying to figure out how to learn because I thought like, oh, I'll get a 600 mil lens so I can look at birds, and I was like, oh God, it's like learning photography all over again. Because it's very different from a short lens. It just
It is,
doesn't.
yeah.
You kind of have to play with things a lot more. You need to know your settings a heck of a lot better than you do with a short lens. And so I've been learning with photography, like you said, that today's day and age on a smartphone, you can just sit there and shoot, and you can get 100 photos really fast. But I think what you said was really important, that there might be two or three out of that 100 that actually show the
Hmm.
story and capture it. And I think it's really cool nowadays, which is why I brought up the old photos I was holding on to, because I started learning that back in the day, photography was not what it was today. They didn't have this like take 500 photos in a day and who cares? We'll just sift through and delete, or we'll just get rid of these. It was really like a momentous occasion. It was, we're taking a photo of something, show up and be present, and we're going to look proper. We're going to make sure it's a specific thing. I thought that was really interesting. I was curious to get your thoughts since you're in the photography world a lot more than I am. When you reflect back on that and even going through the hurricane photos that you've gone through, have you noticed kind of how society's transitioned in taking photos and maybe the meanings we have behind it have changed a little bit?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I do believe that we are still in the infancy of our overshooting. This whole thing, like if you look back, I really believe it was around maybe 2015, 16, 17 that we started to realize, oh, we can, just take a photo to remember it. At the store, you take a photo of the shoes that you might want to buy next time you go shopping. I think it was around that period, but I think we look at it like we're taking pictures of everything, and this has been a long time. It's very been a short period of time that we are now inundated with all of these pictures that we need to figure out what to do with. And I do think it's concerning that, if you take pictures of your child's first birthday party, that is going to be mixed in with your screenshots now, and all these other things. And I think that's a new problem. I don't know if we really look at it that way, but it's something that's newer, and we need to kind of address it a little bit differently and start thinking about our photos differently. But yeah, absolutely. I think the birth of digital and making digital accessible, and then photography on our phones, completely changed the way we look at photography, the interest level people have in it. When I went so I have my bachelor's degree in photography. I went to school at RIT in upstate New York, and they have a great photography program. Kodak was one of the sponsors. Like it's a wonderful program. But I graduated in 1997. At the time, it was a very vast majority was all men, and it was very much a tech field. It was a tech industry, and mostly all guys. So I graduated in 97, started my own business, and started photographing weddings. Early on in my career, I frequently had people who would change their wedding date to be able to get me as their photographer because I was the only woman, and some of the brides wanted to have another woman with them. So it was a very different time. It was a tech heavy, it was a very tech heavy thing. I mean, photography was a technology thing, not in as much, a fun casual hobby as it's really kind of become. So I definitely have seen the evolution of photography. Back then when I started my business, there was probably 30 photographers in my area, and two of them were women. I would guess now I'm in a photographers group for just Southwest Florida where I live. I believe there's close to 300 members, and it's women photographers of Southwest Florida. So there's like 300 of us now versus then. So I think when it evolved from being a tech field into it became a little bit easier to grasp as digital came in. I think the whole landscape of photography changed, and how we look at photography, who's interested in photography. It's a very different space than it was in the 90s for sure.
Yeah, and that's something I've run into on my photography journey is I've got a Canon T6 if I remember right, and it's a entry level SLR, so nothing fancy. It's really fancy for me though because it's got a bunch of settings on there I'm still trying to learn and figure out. And I think what's interesting about photography because I do a lot of I do a lot of landscaping and I do a lot of bird photography. And so when you're out in the elements of things, depending on your sunlight, the weather conditions, like if you've got trees or you've got a meadow or whatever it is, there's so many environments you have to learn how to adapt these cameras to. When you bringing up tech, by the way, it's really fascinating because I went to a camera shop not too long ago, and now they have what's called mirrorless cameras. And now
Hmm.
long story short, it's almost like a digital point and shoot from like '05, but I mean, way high powered and way high tech. So much so that you almost don't even have to mess with the settings on them. Um, and I kind of told the camera guy, I was like, well, I'm not sure I really want to buy one, honestly, because I enjoy going out there and setting the settings on my camera and going out there and learning how to shoot a photo. And so I think it's interesting that there's this shift going on right now in the SLR arena that you don't really have to learn your settings as hard as you used to because these cameras now are getting so smart they're able to pick up all this stuff before you can.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely not the same as those pictures. The skill level it took to capture those photos that you were looking at of your grandmother's it's a much different field than it was then for sure.
But I've had a real appreciation for photography since I got into it because I do feel like if you learn how to use an SLR camera, like my wife got nervous with me when I bought my camera because I just flipped it on manual mode because the auto modes just were not taking good photos. I mean, they were dark or too
Yeah.
bright or just all over the place. And I said, this is awful.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna flip this on manual and see what we can do. And I had no idea what I was doing, but over the course of a few months, I started learning all these settings and I was getting really good photos. I'm an amateur, by the way. I'm not an expert, but I was getting really good photos messing around with manual mode on a camera. And so I got nervous when the guy at the camera shop was talking about these new mirrorless cameras, and I was like, this is like part of the fun, like trying to figure out how to set things. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't set things right, by the way, and you get an awesome photo. It's like the weirdest thing in photography. Um,
Yeah, that's true.
but yeah, it's been interesting to see how photos have been evolving over time. Back in the photos my grandparents have are all black and white. They look kind of tan now because they've been sunned out and kind of they've
Yeah.
had their time on the earth is where I'll go with that. Um, but it's crazy now because these new digital cameras, I mean, you can print, 4 by 6, you can print a 3 foot long picture out of this camera and make banners and posters. We're putting photos. I don't know if my camera will pick it up, but you can put a photo on a mug
Oh yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's my little guy Finley I lost last year. But
Oh,
we can do all these things with photos now that we just weren't able to do for the longest time. And I think one of the big things you hit on too is this new era. We have all these photos now, but it's now become a thing of we have thousands of photos, not just a few. And then we have birthdays mixed into screenshots, mixed into Amazon stuff. And it just we have all these
hmm.
photos all over the place. It becomes how do we sort these things? How do we get rid of the ones we don't want? Um,
Yeah.
do you have
No,
any
for sure.
Do you have any advice
Yeah.
on that by chance?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I personally think that having too many photos is almost as problematic as not having enough. So it's almost like we've come full circle. We're back to your grandma's era where there was one photo and you wish there was a few more. Now there's so many photos you can't find the good ones. So it's just as problematic. There are a couple apps that I suggest. There's one I absolutely love. It's called Daily Delete, and it's an iPhone app. You can download it on your phone and it goes through your photos every day. It uses AI technology to not just identify ones that probably should be deleted, but it learns your preferences. So let's say you have a child and you take pictures of their artwork, you want to keep their artwork, but it might recognize that as junk right away. It'll learn don't delete the artwork. So it has some neat aspects to it. It's super easy and it sort of gamifies it a little bit, so it's a little fun to you open up the day and it tells you what you want to delete. You can trust it and just let it delete those. You can go through and check its work, but it sort of makes it a little fun to clean up your camera roll. So I think that's one big thing. Is that there's another one called Slidebox that's available for both Android and for iPhone. Similar concept, but they're both great just because it helps you clean up your camera roll, so you're eliminating. So if you did take 35 pictures of your cat, it's going to help you pick out the two that are the best or the one, and you're narrowing that all down. So I think that's really a good thing to start with, is just an app that's cleaning up your camera roll. The other thing I think is really important, and I'm religious about doing this, is sliding through your pictures. I do this every night when I hop in bed, or you can do it once a week. Slide through the photos you've taken that week and just hit that heart icon and make sure you're favoriting the best ones as you go along. So
Mm.
then you can pull up and just look at your favorites. So instead of looking at 17,000 photos, you're looking at 400 photos, and it's a much more reasonable thing to look at, to leaf through, to share, to find a special photo. You want to find a great picture of the kids together. You don't have to look at 1,000 photos of the kids. You have those favorites already set aside. So I think those are two big steps. And then also backing up your pictures. I once a month I am checking that my Amazon photos did back up just giving a double check, and then I download the photos to my computer. And the last thing I do, which is one extra step, but I think is also helpful, is I call it my heritage folder. I just have a folder that has super special things in it, and I told my daughter about this. Everybody knows, like, if something were to happen to me, these are the photos. You don't have to leaf through my I mean, I literally own hard drive after hard drive and flash drives, and I've got more pictures than what to do with. But I do have one folder that's set aside. It has everything from pictures, some pictures I've scanned of my parents and my grandparents, a few from my childhood, special ones of my daughter's childhood. It might be a couple hundred pictures, but it's a couple hundred pictures that spans 100 years, and it's really special pictures. So I just want to make sure that those are always set aside. They're passed down, that my daughter could give them to her children. So to me, that's just kind of an important step, to make sure that you're not leaving a legacy of a sea of photographs, because that's what gets thrown in the trash when your kids inherit. And I hear this all the time. People do contact me when they've inherited photos quite frequently, but a big thing is nobody wants them. It's too much to sift through all of them, and that's parents and grandparents that are passing away or leaving us photos today. What's it going to be like in 20 and 30 years when we continue shooting 17,000 pictures a year, and then we hand that mess over to someone? They are not going to want to look through it. So I think just doing those few little steps, doing the favorites, maybe setting aside a folder of special pictures now, is a good idea, so that you can ensure that your parents and grandparents and your own legacy lives on and moves on with your heritage.
I think that's really important to say, because that's what I kind of thought about as you were talking. I was going, 17,000 photos what I have now, and I'm doing a lot of social media right now, so I'm even just bumping my photos and videos up like crazy, and I get overwhelmed with all that, honestly. Like when I try to go scroll through and clean up stuff, I'm going, "Oh my God, 17,000 photos. Like how much time is this going to take to clean this out?" And
Yeah.
I'll be honest to my listeners, I'll share a really embarrassing thing. I'm pretty sure about 6,000 of those photos are of my rabbit for the last 12 years. I'm pretty sure. Uh, just, lots of fun moments kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
but it's just, it's hard to say in life, because I think what's really cool about photography that I've learned about it is that you capture a lot of very special moments of life you're never going to get again. And um,
Hmm.
my I lost my grandfather in 2020, and I was so grateful to have all these photos that I never looked at as often as I actually do. It's really interesting. Um, when I lost my son at the hospital, I still remember this. This was when photography really got important for me. Um, my head was not in a space of taking photos or even thinking about that for whatever reason. And I know a lot of parents in my situation, I call it the club we don't want to be part of, but we don't always get that opportunity to have photos of our children that we have to leave at the hospital. And so we always end up with this void going home and not having photos. And the nurse at the hospital that was there for my wife and I that day called a photographer in town and said,
Oh,
"Hey, I'm having the photographer come by tomorrow. I don't know if you guys wanted that or not, but you're going to want pictures because you're going to want to remember this." And she said,
mm,
"I know it's really hard for you, but you're going to want this." And I remember sitting there going, I never would have thought about that. I would have lived in regret land
yeah.
big time. Um,
Oh, that gives me
but
chills. Yeah.
just that some person, again, a nurse I don't even know, said you're gonna want this, and I
Yeah.
was nervous because I told her, I said, our son passed away. This isn't going to be some happy, joyous moment of life. And she said, this woman comes to our hospital specifically for stillborns because she knows how to be sensitive. She knows how to be aware. But she's able to create some very memorable photos for you. And I can share that this woman, I blessed her up and down for what she does because that is such a hard environment to be in. But she took photos and made it a really happy session for us. And I know it's weird to say in the moment of loss
Yeah.
like that, but she made it a very enjoyable thing. And she took photos to this day that I still look at every day. And had it
Oh,
not been for this woman that did photography for stillbirth children and parents, um, honestly, I can say like a lot of parents that um, don't go through this and don't have photos, it's even more painful after that. So this photographer just had a very special place in life, and I mean that from a heart-caring place that I don't even. And she told me too. She said, "I feel terrible for parents, and it's hard for me to do this job. It really is." But she said, "I think about that after they grieve and get through that really hard moment of grief." They're so grateful for their photos and they still reach out to me and say thank you for being in that moment when I couldn't be present to give us that gift and just how powerful photography can be for us in those moments.
oh my gosh, absolutely. That is a very powerful story.
Yeah, so I always encourage people to, and I think you said it a lot today on the podcast that I know we all snap 17,000 photos like myself, but there's always going to be, for me, that's about 90 photos of that one moment of my life. And those 90 photos, I can say if 80% of my photos died and deleted off the planet, that's fine. I could care less. But there's going to be those ones that really you're going to want. And I did
Yes.
print out those photos, by the way. So if the cloud goes to crap or something, I got physical copies of that.
Good. I honestly think that's the only safe way is to keep everything in multiple places. There's no one single safe place. So I'm glad you've taken those steps for sure.
Well, I think it's really cool. I've been so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast today because you've gotten to see. I mean, a lot of us do this, but you live in photography, and I just think it's so cool that your whole life can be wrapped up in pictures and so many memories and so many experiences and so many lives you interacted with, and you've been there with people. I remember when we talked, you did some NFL photography. I know
Mm,
you've done weddings, if I remember right. You've done those quite a
yep.
few times.
Lots of weddings. Yeah.
But you've been with people also on the other spectrum of that, which is grief and loss and severe trauma. And I think that's amazing that you're in a field that you've had a passion for since you were little, and you've done that your whole life, and you've gotten to live through photos of moments of life that everybody's been in, from happy to sad to trauma to loss. Um, that's got to be so fulfilling when you look back on that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I used to always say I go to parties for a living. That's as a wedding photographer. That's how I've always felt like it is just joyous occasions. I've been a part of some really neat and awesome things and had some great experiences that I wouldn't have if it weren't for my love of photography. I never would have imagined. I don't think there was a world you could have explained to me 3 years ago that it would also encompass helping people through a grieving process and comforting people and being a part of the backstage of somebody's life in that aspect as well. So it's crazy that photography has taken me from, not only being intimately involved in a joyous occasion, but also intimately involved in loss and helping people to get through that experience. So yeah, it's crazy. It really is crazy where photography has taken me for sure.
I mean, I remember you telling me, I think I asked you when we first met, but I was like, how many photos do you think you've taken over the course of your career? And I remember you saying like it's probably like 2 million photos or something. I mean,
Millions. Oh,
it's
for
up
sure,
there.
millions. Yeah. I'm at about 1,500 weddings. So, weddings and lots of families I couldn't even count, thousands and thousands of families. So, yeah, I'm sure it's in the millions for sure.
I always thought it'd be fun to be a wedding photographer because I still remember my wedding years ago back in 2012, and our
Okay.
photographers were it was a husband and wife couple that did it, and the husband was kind of like a quiet, reserved kind of guy. He liked to be in the background, but the wife was Mrs. Like get in there and get photos, and what was really fun about them is like they would jump in there and like create the scenes. They would tell us to like do certain things or they would jump in and help facilitate stuff at times, and we stayed friends with them for a long time because they were just really
Oh,
fun people, and they made. We were nervous about the photography side of things for the wedding. They were like, "This is about fun. This is not some serious thing to do," and they just brought this really light feeling to it. So I think photographers just have a way of getting people out of the seriousness of life and just really being present is the best way I can say that. Be present and enjoy the moment. Is
oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, I really think being a wedding photographer is it's partly being good at taking pictures, but you have to really be good at interacting with people, making people feel comfortable, making them be themselves and natural. And so, I mean, it's so much more than just being able to take a good photograph. You have to be like your wedding photographer, like willing to just jump in and be a part of the moment and try to make it fun for everybody so you're getting those natural reactions. A lot of people, if you just point a camera in their face, they just freeze up. They feel awkward. So yeah, you have to be able to do both really well for sure.
Well, the one thing I never could get my grandfather to do is smile in a photo. That was like so hard to do. And I never, and
Oh,
I was laughing too, by the way, because these old photos that my grandparents have from the 40s, 50s, everybody looks so serious, like they went to a nasty funeral or something, and like, they're just like blank expression, angry, like mad fit. And I'm going,
yeah.
did you guys smile back then? Like, and I got told though, it's funny. I got told by somebody that lived in that era. They said photos back then we could not take 10 or 20 of them. We could take like three at max, and that was it. So everybody
Mhm.
was like game on, game face. Just
Yeah,
how, and it wasn't because we were mad. It wasn't that, but we just knew that we had such few shots to do this, and
yeah,
we just had to take that action. But now, on an iPhone or even an SLR, you just put it on multiple photo shutter, and you just hold the trigger down while
yeah,
everybody's having a good
yeah.
time and get 50
Oh,
photos and find the two.
for sure. I find myself even shooting very different. So when I started, I was all film. My first weddings were all film weddings, and I definitely always had kind of a photojournalist approach. I took a lot of pictures, probably more than other film photographers did. But once digital happened and storage became so inexpensive, I mean, it was just like shoot away. So sometimes I even have to think like as at a wedding, I'll get excited. Like I'll be on the dance floor taking pictures. And I'm just like snapping away. I'm like, okay, I need to dial this back a minute because I mean, it's just you get so into it. You can take too many pictures now for sure.
Well, now you're throwing me back to the days where when we had like our camera or whatever, and then we were like, all right, we gotta go take it to Walgreens or whatever
Oh my
store,
gosh.
and then
Yep.
you had to take the film out a certain way because if it got overexposed, that was it, photo's
Yep.
gone. And then you
Yep.
also, by the way, are sitting there going, I have no idea if I got any photos or if I got a few good photos or just one good photo. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so it was like Christmas Day when you got the photos back, especially if your roll was good. You were like, I did good. I got this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You know what? It is fun though, because like I said, I print my photos every month. It's a little bit like that when my pictures come in the mail. Like I'm excited to see them and to hold them. So yeah, another reason to just print your pictures again. And you get that feeling again when when they show up in the mail and you open up the envelope and you can leaf through and actually hold your photos.
I love that. My wife and I found a camera, or what was it? I don't remember what the heck we called those back in the day. Oh, 35
Yep.
millimeter film.
Like a point and shoot. Oh, 35 millimeter. Yeah.
Like those little
Yep.
canister things. Yeah, we
Yeah.
found one of those somewhere, and my wife was like, "I don't even know what's on this," and I said, "I don't even know where it's from." So we went to I don't remember how many drugstores, and we all got laughed at by the people that were there. They were like, how long has this been sitting around? I'm like, you used to be able to come here and print these out. And they go, oh, we don't do that
Yeah.
anymore. We have to ship it out to Hush and
Yeah.
Gush, wherever that is. And I was going,
Yeah.
nobody uses 35 mil anymore. And then I looked around the store, and yeah, sure enough, you can't buy film anymore. It's gone.
No.
Um,
Yeah, it is kind of making a comeback though. There are professional photographers that are shooting film again. And there is a neat quality about it that it is really a pretty quality. And yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a resurgence in photographers shooting film again for sure.
It definitely has. I went out to the Washington coast back when my wife and I were dating, and I still have this photo somewhere. It's hidden away because it's the one good shot I got on a film SLR, and it was when I was like, knew nothing about cameras. I had no idea what to do. My wife was like giving me advice on it, but I was literally like straddling a creek on my hands and my elbows, little tiny creek. And then anyway, there were these overgrowth things kind of coming in from the side. But it was this little stream of water. And my wife thought I was nuts for shooting that. Like she's like, you've never shot with this before. I said, yeah, I never have, but totally cool. And I remember
Yeah.
I only shot like 3 or 4 photos, if that, because it was on 35 mil, so you don't have
Yeah.
not like an
No.
iPhone.
Yeah.
But long story short, I got a killer photo of it, and the only problem was it was shot with black and white film, so my wife had to go into the dark room at our college. And I don't even know that process. I wasn't there for that, but I heard it's a lot process to do black and white through things. But anyway, I was like really excited when she brought the photo, and I went, "Oh, this is awesome!" Like never could repeat the photo again, but it's but
That's
that's
funny.
kind of
So yeah,
cool about it.
you've
Yeah.
always been into photography.
It's fun. I don't know why. I
Yeah.
don't know why. You capture so many just unique moments of life. And
Yeah.
um, like back home for me, I got really into bird photography because we had lots of colored birds out there. We had cardinals, we had golden finches, we had blue jays, we had I don't remember half the birds out there. American bluebird, which has like blue and orange on it. And long story short, these little creatures are so fascinating to shoot because you literally have like a split second, and that's what I got. I really need to up my camera game. And for those of you guys who haven't used an SLR before, when you're shooting a small creature that likes to move like it's on ADD or something, you really have to learn your camera settings, and you got to be
Yeah.
quick,
Oh,
because you
for
might set
sure.
up a shot and then it's like, choo, it's just like gone.
Yeah.
So,
No, for sure. Yeah, I'm not nature's never been a huge interest of mine. If I see a fabulous sunset, I want to put a bride and groom in front of it. That's how
I
I
like
feel.
that.
I love working with people. That's my photography skill. But yeah. Yeah, nature's tough.
I didn't realize that till I got into some photography groups. There were people that were very, I'll say, passionately adamant about what they do, and there was people that were
Hmm.
like, "I do weddings, and that's it. That's all I photograph. I don't do anything else."
Yeah.
And then there were like these people
Yeah.
are like, "I do wildlife. I don't like weddings. Not my thing." And
Yeah.
I was going, "Wow, like these people are very specialized at what they do." Um,
Yeah. Most professional photographers, I mean, we have what we love and we do that. So after Hurricane Ian, I was kind of telling you that, like, the area was just destroyed. So my weddings had all canceled, my families had all canceled, everything was just done. And I posted a thing on my Facebook page just saying, this is really upsetting to me that my I there's not going to be any weddings or clients for me for like a year. And I had several friends reach out with these ideas for things I could take pictures of. And I realized then, I was like, oh, you don't get it. Like, I do not want to photograph in a dance studio. I do not want to photograph Santa Claus pictures. Like, I have zero interest in taking pictures of, this nature thing for this website. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I just want to do the photos that I love. But it was very fascinating to me that while people were trying to help me through that process, their thoughts were, well, like, you just need something different to take pictures of. And I kind of was just like, well, I suppose, but no, that's not, I mean, that's not what I do. you know?
Yeah. Well, I learned through those conversations with photographers and people way skilled at it than I am, that I learned from them that, if you are a wildlife photographer, there's a whole setting, lens thing, kit, the whole thing to do that. If you're into weddings, there's a whole thing to do that. And that's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I had no idea until I talked to
Yeah.
professional
No, I don't.
photographers.
Your
Like,
your telephoto lens is much better than mine. So I don't need a 600 millimeter to shoot weddings. So yeah, it's a different equipment and everything for sure.
I'll just say the 600 mil. I haven't actually gotten out to use it yet, but I'm nervous about it because the lens itself, I swear, weighs like 10 times more than my camera. And
Uh-huh.
I can't freehand it like my small lenses. I got to put it on a
Yep.
tripod.
Yep.
Um, so I've been sitting there going, great. Now I got to start all over learning how to do this, and it's a manual lens too, by the way. And I'm used to my Canon lenses that are just you can
Yeah.
kind of hold the trigger down a little and they kind of auto focus. The 600 mil is
Yeah.
not like that. You got to learn how to manual.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that'll be fun.
But you're gonna get some amazing pictures with that. That's quite a lens.
That's what I'm excited about. That's what I learned too from, all these photographers I met, including you when I first talked, that you can't really mess up and you can't really do something wrong. There's so much to learn through photography, and it's only through taking those photos is how you get better. Um,
Hmm.
I, I'd love for you to share that because you've taken millions of photos. What's that been like for you as far as learning? Are you still learning new things with the camera or learning?
Oh gosh. You know what? It's funny. I jokingly sometimes I'll say to my husband that I'm going to my cubicle when I'm going to a wedding. It's just me going to my office. So for me, a lot of it is just very second nature. Um, I'm not the best. I've taught several photographers. I have several assistants that have worked with me have gone on to become photographers. I think I'm a good teacher at um, how to work a wedding, how to be with a wedding, how to work with a client. But when it comes to the technical aspect, it's like I just have been doing the things I do for 30 years that it's hard to even teach someone else. So to me, it's a little second nature. But I think it just kind of gets there in terms of that you're just pulling out your lens and doing your thing, and in a way that it's almost hard to even explain somebody else what you're doing because you're just like boop 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 and doing it. So that's kind of where I think I am. I'm trying to think of the last time I learned something technique wise that was, can't think of anything specifically. Yeah, I'm just going to my cubicle. I'm just going to my office and doing
Oh,
the skill I have.
I love that for you though, because that's what I hope to get there one day with my photography. Because I've always loved watching. Because I go to a place called Chambers Bay near where I live, and photographers go down there all the time because there's lots of eagles, there's lots of scenery to shoot, and I see these guys with their cameras, and I mean they're just like moving so quick with the settings, and I'm
Hmm.
going, how the heck are you like doing that so fast? I find it fascinating. I find it really like an art form, to be very honest. I find that
Yeah.
like artistic to know all those settings and know how to get that shot.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I think it just comes with time. You're just shooting a lot and you're just yeah. I find for me I'm a better photographer when I'm shooting more often. If I'm shooting every day, it's so much easier. If like even after the hurricane, I realized well, two funny not funny, but two things happened after the hurricane where I had a couple months that I wasn't shooting much. When I got back and I was shooting more again, I felt like I had to think a little harder about it. It wasn't as natural. And also, I never realized how photography is actually it's a very physical job. So I was like a little out of shape after I had to get myself back in shape into my shooting mode. But yeah, it's interesting how when you're doing it every day, it's extremely second nature. To just get your settings, do your thing, look at a situation and know you're backlit. I need to do this, or the lights off to your left. I need to light here. So just things like that they come very second nature when you're doing it all the time for sure.
Well, Krista, I just want to say as we wrap up the podcast today, this has been an awesome interview to talk to you and get to hear about your experiences through Hurricane Ian, helping people restore photos, and also hearing a bit about your background in photography. You've had an incredible career touching the lives of thousands of people across weddings and across disasters. And really, by the way, now in this place where you're at now, educating people on backing up their photos so people like me don't lose 17,000 photos in an accident. So I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. You make this so easy. I'm very thrilled to have been a guest.
Well, as I wrap up the podcast, I just have a couple questions to ask you. If you ran into somebody who's going through grief or even a loss like a disaster like Hurricane Ian, do you have a couple things you might share with them that you learned through those people that you helped?
Gosh, probably just give it time. I mean, don't um just to give it time, give yourself time to heal, to um move through the process, that it'll be okay. It'll all be okay.
And then I really love that advice because I do think that it takes a lot of time, especially in disaster relief, to really, it takes years for a lot of people in those areas to get even, I hate using the word normal, but I say getting back to normal where you even close to
Hmm.
were before that disaster happened. It takes a lot of time to get there and being kind to yourself and understanding that you're rebuilding from ground zero. And that's going to take some time and some effort, and it's going to take a lot of assistance and help to get there. I wanted to ask you as well, where can people connect with you if they want to find you on social media?
Sure. Well, my website is the Krista K, Krista with a K, so thekristak.com. And that has links to all of my social media stuff. I'm on Instagram the most. That's kind of my home, where I love to post all of my tips for getting photo organized. And that is the .krista.k. And I also have a book coming out, which is called Beyond the Storm, and that is distributed by Simon and Schuster, so it's available in Barnes and Noble, on Amazon, all the things. And that's the whole story of all the things I saw behind the scenes, helping people through Hurricane Ian, but also all the steps that anyone can take to proactively secure their pictures so they don't have that same thing happen to them. And that's, yeah, it's Beyond the Storm. So that's where I am.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on getting your first book written. I think that's
Thank
awesome.
you.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to see it's in Barnes and Noble. I'm gonna have to go check that out. I have a Barnes and Noble
Yeah.
near my house.
Yeah, it comes out
But
June 3rd. So it's in
June
pre-order
3rd.
right now. June 3rd. Yep, it's pre-order right now. And all the links are on my website too for that. But yeah, it'll be available then.
Awesome. And I'll be sharing all of Krista's links on my website as well as when I list the podcast. And it's going to come out probably next month or so. But I'm just going to say I'll have all the links to your website, your Instagram, and also where people can find your book.
Oh,
So,
awesome. Thank you
um,
so much.
so I want to thank everybody for joining Krista and I today on this episode of the Empower Grief Journey. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Krista's story. The Empower Grief Journey is about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want to invite you guys to follow our podcast at empowergriefjourney.com. I also want you to know you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.